When Paul says run the race to win it, if only one person can win the race, what does that mean for us? What does the race of faith look like? It's to care and love one another. It's to care and love God. It's to do everything we do to give glory and honor to God. Can you imagine if our race of faith is really just the life that we're living and we must all live in the very best possible way? Can you imagine what the world would look like if each one of us was living our life to be like the very best, the most loving, the most caring, the most compassionate? I just saw an episode on the internet, on a television show, where one guy, he brings donuts to their office to give them donuts, and he says, "Here you go, guys. I brought, bagels from New York." He drove hours to get there. He comes back, and then there's another guy who's like, "Oh man, I have to give him something back because that was a nice gesture." And then the whole episode is this back and forth between each person doing a favor for the other person for the whole show. What if our Christian life was like that, where we were living our lives to help one another, and every time someone helped us, we helped someone else? What if it was like that? Now I'm going to skip over the next few, but they'll be on the internet, and it basically is Paul saying that we are going to cast our perishable, our mortal bodies, and God will lead us into immortality. And there's good verses, but it's not going to take away from what we're trying to get to. But if you will, I don't have this on the screen, open to 1 Corinthians chapter 9. We're going to be closing up pretty quickly here. 1 Corinthians 29, verse 26, because I didn't put it back up on there. 1 Corinthians 9, 26. Paul just finished saying, they do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable one. Verse 26. So I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as one beating the air, but I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. See, this was really about a physical race, and he says athletes condition their bodies, their physical bodies. But when Paul says he disciplines his body, it's not about him working out, it's not about him going for jogs and eating enough calories to sustain him, but rather, for Paul, it's a spiritual metaphor. Paul uses metaphors all the time. And so when he says, I discipline my body, he's actually saying, I discipline the only thing I have control over, my life. He says, that's the only thing I can be responsible for is my life. And I will make my life count every moment of every day. As we actively expect the coming of Christ, we, you, and I must live our lives as though heaven is already here. Make your life count. Make your life count. The proverb says, a little sleep, a little slumber, and poverty will come upon you. Make your life count. You only can control your own life. If you're married, you know you can't control your wife or husband as much as you would like to. If you have kids, you know you can't control them as much as you would like to. And kids know we can't control our parents. You can't control the economy. You can't control... There's nothing you can control except what? Your own life. As we wait for the coming of Christ, you can either choose to live for yourself or you can choose to live for God. And there's one more passage I want us to look at. All things are lawful, Paul says. Okay, now this is as we wait. You know, we can get into these conversations about what's right, what's wrong, what's black, what's white, all of this. I would say if we're honest, most of us live in the middle gray. Like we know what's right and we know what's wrong. We know what we shouldn't do and we know what we should do, but we're never very good at doing all of the things we're supposed to. And we're not very good at staying away from the things we're not supposed to. So we live somewhere in the middle, unfortunately. But look at what Paul says. All things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things build up. Let no one seek his own good, but the good of his neighbor. It says, look, you can do anything you want to, fine. But just because you can do something doesn't mean that it's good for you. Just because you can do something, it doesn't mean it's going to build you up. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that it's going to be helpful. You all know in your lives what is not helpful. All of you know in your lives what is not building you up. And the task for you and for me is to do the very best that we can to stay away from the things that are hurtful and harmful to our lives. And what does he say, kind of as a remedy, is don't seek your own good, but seek the good of your neighbor. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all to the glory of God.
Right.
Of course, this was a long conversation about food, sacrifice to idols. We can talk about that another day. It's a long verse. But Paul says, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you drink, wherever you go, whatever you do, however you speak, whoever you speak to, do it all for the glory of God.
Amen.
If you're married, if you want to be married, if you have a wife or a husband, we use those illustrations because they're the easiest ones. The hope is that when you're not with your wife or husband, you would act in a way that would honor them, right? You do everything you can, like you should live your life the way you would when they're there right next to you. It's the same thing when it comes to the spirituality aspect of what we're teaching tonight, this morning. Live your life, everything you do. Ask the question, does it give glory to God or does it only glorify myself? Am I living to honor God, or is it just about what I want and what I want to get out of this life? As we wait, as we spend these 6 weeks talking and waiting and longing for, preparing and actively expecting the coming Christ, even though Jesus isn't here, it doesn't mean that it's not real. It doesn't mean that he won't. What it does mean is that the only thing that you and I can control is whether you and I choose to live our lives as though the kingdom of heaven has already come. If we can do that, when Jesus does come, you will just pick up where you left off.
Amen.
That's the only thing you and I can do, is to live in glory and honor of God. Today I'll be emailing the notes. There's a couple more slides that we didn't get to. Some book quotes that are extremely good. But definitely we'll have those ready for you. And I want you to read through the notes because it's important. I have them in a way that they're in an outline form. But if you read them, they'll make sense. I promise you. That's how I've structured it. Read them. Read the quotes at the end of the study, so that you can begin to see exactly what Advent looks like and what God is expecting from us and for us. Let us close by singing our closing hymn. Hymn number